Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating and honestly deeply researched perspective from tech journalist Karen Hao. She spent years investigating the major players in artificial intelligence, and we're going to dive into what she calls the AI empire. Our goal here? To basically peel back the curtain. We want to reveal the hidden physical and human costs that exist right behind that daily AI hype we're also used to seeing. This is all about stepping past the slick marketing to understand the actual nuts and bolts of how this technology is built, and perhaps more importantly, who is actually paying the price for it.
So, are we being gaslit by AI companies? It's a pretty provocative core question, but it comes directly from our source material. Ha's reporting actively challenges both the utopian dreams and the doomsday narratives that get pushed by major AI executives. The research suggests that by bouncing us between these two extremes, promising a paradise of endless abundance on one hand, and then warning of humanity's total destruction on the other, these companies are creating a very specific public narrative. And that narrative is entirely designed to convince that they, and only they, possess the expertise to safely control this technology.
All right, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. The myth of AGI, 2. Building the AI empire, 3. The OpenAI boardroom drama, 4. The hidden human cost, 5. The environmental toll, and finally, 6. Rockets versus bicycles. Let's just jump right in. Section 1. The myth of AGI. Now, the ultimate goal these tech giants claim to be chasing centers around a 3-letter acronym, AGI, or Artificial General Intelligence. But here's the catch. It's an incredibly ambiguous goal. The source notes that there isn't even a scientific consensus on what human intelligence actually means, which, as you can imagine, makes recreating it a pretty slippery moving target. Hao's reporting highlights how this definition is intentionally fluid. When executives are talking to Congress, AGI is framed as a miraculous tool to cure cancer. When they're pitching to investors, well, then it's a $100 billion revenue generator. And to consumers like us, it's just the ultimate digital assistant. The source argues this ambiguity isn't an accident. It's a deliberate tool used to mobilize massive capital from investors while effectively warding off strict government regulation. Just look at this quote from OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. It perfectly highlights the cognitive dissonance at play here. AI leaders frequently use this kind of extreme myth-making to position themselves as the sole arbiters of our future. By claiming the stakes are literally either total global annihilation or a utopia where all diseases are suddenly cured, they build this incredibly effective argument. They're telling the public and the government that they must be trusted and only them to steer the ship. Moving on to Section 2, Building the AI Empire. So what happens is these abstract myths of AGI translate directly into aggressive corporate expansion in the real world. The rhetoric isn't just talk, it's literally the fuel for an imperial agenda. Hao outlines 3 specific pillars of what she calls the AI empire, noting that these companies act a lot like the historical empires of the past. First up, we have resource and land grabbing. This means hoovering up the intellectual property of artists and writers without compensation and physically seizing land for massive data centers. Second is mass labor exploitation, which we'll actually look at more closely in just a minute, but it basically involves relying on hundreds of thousands of invisible workers around the globe. And finally, monopolizing knowledge and research. The source details how these companies bankroll the vast majority of AI researchers, which effectively lets them control what gets published and silence critical voices who might point out the technology's flaws. Let's look at a very specific example in Section 3, the OpenAI boardroom drama. Walking through this timeline reveals the stark reality of exactly how power is wielded in the AI industry. According to the source material, on day 1, key executives grew highly concerned about CEO Sam Altman's behavior, warning independent board members that he was causing instability and pitting internal teams against one another. So, on day 2, the board, aiming to act in the public's interest over profit, fired him. But wait, by day 3, major financial backers, most notably Microsoft, launched an aggressive pressure campaign, and by day 5, Altman was swiftly reinstated. The source presents this entire saga not just as spicy corporate drama, but as a crystal-clear demonstration of how an attempt by independent board members to rein in perceived chaos was rapidly and forcefully overturned by powerful financial interests. But this is about more than just boardroom battles. Section 4, the hidden human cost. That power struggle we just talked about has devastating consequences for everyday workers, because the decisions made in those closed rooms dictate the very shape of our economy. Now, while AI companies love to boast about job creation, the source material paints a drastically different picture. Companies are laying off highly educated middle-tier workers. We're talking marketers, copywriters, even directors. But what happens to them? Well, many are being forced right into a highly stressful digital gig economy, doing what's known as data annotation just to survive. It's essentially a digital assembly line, and quite frankly, it's a brutal cycle of labor extraction. Step 1. Tech giants scrape vast amounts of data from the web. Step 2. Those displaced human workers sit at their laptops under intense pressure, manually labeling text and images. They are often isolated, unable to step away, and competing for extremely low-paying microtasks. And finally, step 3, the AI models use this meticulously labeled data to automate even more human jobs. As Al points out, the irony here is dark. Workers are literally training the very machines that are designed to make their own skills and livelihoods completely obsolete. And the costs aren't just human. Section 5, the environmental toll. Beyond the labor side of things, just let this staggering number sink in for a second. 100,000. That is the number of GPUs, graphics processing units, operating inside Elon Musk's Colossus supercomputer facility in Memphis. According to the source, to power a facility of this immense magnitude, it requires 35 methane gas turbines, and those turbines are located right in a vulnerable working-class community that was never properly consulted. They are now pumping toxins into the air, exacerbating local respiratory illnesses. You see, the myth we are sold is that AI is just software living in a clean, pristine, completely invisible cloud. Actually, scratch that. The reality on the ground is heavy, physical, and incredibly resource-intensive. Eval cites a proposed OpenAI facility in Abilene, Texas, that would require massive amounts of power. To put it into perspective, it would demand energy equivalent to 20% of the entire power needs of New York City. These colossal data centers aren't just draining local power grids, they're also competing directly with vulnerable communities for fresh drinking water, just to keep their servers from overheating. So, is there a better way? Section 6, rockets versus bicycles. The good news is, it absolutely doesn't have to be this way. The source uses this fascinating, vivid metaphor for an alternative framework: rockets versus bicycles. Right now, companies are obsessed with building rockets, these brute force, large language models that consume enormous amounts of data, energy, and human labor to try and be everything machines for everyone. But we could be building bicycles. Bicycles are highly efficient, targeted models, like DeepMind's AlphaFold, which actually just won a Nobel Prize. AlphaFold uses small, curated data sets to predict protein folding. It's a breakthrough that massively accelerates drug discovery and treats diseases, all with minimal computational waste. The point is, you don't need to launch a giant rocket just to go to the grocery store, and we certainly don't need a massive, environmentally damaging LLM to solve every societal problem. And you know what? There is a real appetite for this kind of change. 80%. That is the massive, unified majority of Americans who currently believe the AI industry needs regulation. I mean, it is incredibly rare to see this level of consensus on literally any issue today. The source demonstrates that there is a huge public pushback forming against these imperial corporate tactics, whether it's artists suing over their intellectual property or local communities fiercely protesting the construction of new data centers in their backyards. So we'll conclude our explainer today with this final, critical thought. Will we let the empires dictate our future, or will we demand the bicycles of AI? The source material makes it abundantly clear that the future of this technology is not predetermined. We actually have the agency to push back against the exploitation of labor and natural resources, and instead advocate for a more democratic, sustainable technological future that actually serves humanity. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I really hope this gives you a completely new lens to view the next big AI announcement.